Okay, now we're in chapter 48. We're going to finish up the chapter today and then hopefully can get into 49. In chapter 48, we have this scene with all this is again, this is the resolution of the story. It's kind of winding down and we're summing things up. And there's some very important things happening in these chapters that are going to set the tone for the rest of the history of Israel and the nation and what's going to become of the tribes and the sons of Jacob. The first scene we have is Jacob calling Joseph to himself and blessing him and having him bring his sons for blessing. If you remember, Joseph has two sons. What are their names? Joseph's sons?
Manasseh and Ephraim.
Manasseh and Ephraim. And who was the older of the two?
Manasseh.
Yes.
Manasseh's the older, Ephraim's the younger. So Jacob calls them and he wants to bless the sons. And the first thing is, why does he do this for Joseph? He doesn't do this for any of the other brothers. And he says, in fact, at one point, these children, your children are now mine. Their children can be yours, but they're mine. Do you remember what that meant? What the significance of him taking Ephraim and Manasseh now as his sons instead of and they will, in a sense, take the place of Joseph for Israel.
He's passing on the blessing.
He is passing on the blessing. He's doing something to Joseph that is surprising in one sense. Not surprising if you've read the whole story and know Book of Genesis. But how is he treating Joseph in this scene?
As the firstborn.
Yes, he's the firstborn. And the firstborn, if you remember, gets the double portion of the inheritance. So that means if, in your case, Haley and Addie, the double portion would go to Haley, which means your parents would divide all their property up in three, and Haley would get two parts, and Addison would get one because she's the youngest. And the oldest gets the double portion. I'm sorry, that's how it goes, but that's just the rules, And so in this case here, Joseph is being treated as the oldest, as the one who gets the double portion. But what is he? What number son is he of the 12? Do you remember which number he is?
11.
11.
11. Yeah.
He's the oldest given to Rachel, but he is down way down the bottom. He's number 11. But he was clearly the favorite son, and he's the chosen one for Jacob. And so that's why there is no tribe of Joseph. There's a tribe of Ephraim and there's a tribe of Manasseh, those two. And he gets two tribes, not just one of all the 12 tribes of Israel. But then he blesses them, and Jacob does something a little strange when Joseph brings the boys up to bless them. Remember what he does?
He purposely puts Manasseh in front of his right hand to get the right hand blessing. And Ephraim and Jacob switches his hands around.
Yeah. If you remember, as we get into that part here, in verse 8, Jacob is his eyes are dim with age, reminding you of Isaac when he was wanting to bless Esau, and Jacob, whose eyes are dim, he calls him up, and Joseph does what he's supposed to do, puts the older at his right hand, the younger at his left hand, and then Jacob instead he crosses his hands and puts his right hand on Ephraim the younger and his left hand on Manasseh the older, which implies that Ephraim the younger is going to be the special one. That's the one who will be more blessed. Manasseh will be certainly blessed, but Ephraim will be different. And he will be a rising star in Israel as Ephraim. And that's interesting because the history of Israel you're going to see is you have these 12 tribes, but then so much of it loses their identity. But the Judah becomes the tribe of the south that becomes preeminent, and Ephraim becomes the tribe of the north that is sort of preeminent. And everyone kind of looks to them as the leaders of the north. So he stretches out their hands, he blessed them. That's where we left it off last time. And let's pick it up there. Verse 17 to 22. Haley, you want to start us off today?
Sure, yeah. Okay. When Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. And he took his father's hand and moved it from Ephron's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, "Not this way, my father, since this is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He shall also become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall become a multitude of nations. So he blessed them that day, saying, By you Israel will pronounce blessings, saying, God make you as Ephraim and Manasseh. Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, Behold, I am about to die, but God will be with you and will bring you again into the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to you rather than to your brothers one mountain slope that I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and my bow.
Okay. All right. So, what's Joseph's reaction when his father blesses, it gives the greater blessing to the younger son?
Trying
No,
to correct him to the way he thinks it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it says he is displeased. Joseph is displeased with the favoring of the younger. But Jacob makes no apologies. He refuses, but Jacob refuses and blesses the younger over the older. Now they're both going to be blessed, but the younger will have the greater blessing. So that's the good news for you, Addison. Younger gets the better blessing here. Being the youngest in my family, I know how it goes. So Jacob refuses. Now this has been a pattern throughout Genesis. You have a battle of brothers. And let's see if you can remember the brothers in Genesis. Who's the first brothers in the book of Genesis?
Cain and Abel.
enable.
Cain and Abel. Okay, I'm going to have a little subtitle here, the battle of brothers in Genesis. We have Cain and Abel. All right. Who's the older?
Well,
Cain is the older.
Yeah.
Okay. And Abel's the younger. But who is clearly the one who is blessed by the Lord, the one who pleases the Lord?
Abel, because he brought a blood sacrifice.
Yeah. Abel is the younger, he is the favored one. Now, after that, we go down a little bit and we have the next set of brothers. Yes, Addison.
This is a mute. It's interesting because Abel's name is Abel and he was like Abel.
Do you know what Abel's main name really means in the Hebrew? It means breath. That he was just there for a moment, for a breath, and he's gone. And then God raised up Seth. But you're right, he was by faith, he was indeed Abel, and he was the first in those mentioned in Hebrews who had faith. After that, Noah has three sons. We won't get into the three sons. Well, we can throw Noah's sons in there. Who are Noah's sons?
Shem, Japheth, Ham,
Ham, and
Japheth.
Japheth. Very good. And Shem is the blessed one. Ham is the bad one. So should we put a line through his name, or just maybe italicize his name? So he's kind of bad. Bad, yeah. Japheth's kind of just there for the ride. All right. Next we have, after that, who's the next set of brothers we come across?
Jacob and Esau?
Before them.
Kids.
Um,
Oh,
Oh,
it's two kids, one with,
Wasn't it the one that married?
Who was the, well, think of the father of Jacob and Esau.
Oh, Ishmael,
Yes.
Mm.
Ishmael
Isaac,
and Isaac. And there, who's the older?
Ishmael.
Ishmael is the older. But we find out that it's Isaac, the younger, who is blessed. Okay. And then you had, was it the next after Isaac? We mentioned them already.
Jacob and Esau, Esau and Jacob.
And Jacob. And clearly, we know Esau is the older, only by a few minutes or even a few seconds, perhaps.
Mhm.
But Jacob is clearly the one. The older will serve the younger. He keeps doing that. And again, now we have we'll call the brothers
All 12.
and Joseph. And youngish. He's the second, 11th. Second youngest, we'll say.
Mm.
And he's the one who's sort of blessed here. Okay. And now we have Manasseh and Ephraim, and again, the same thing happens. The younger, God is always seems to be favoring the younger. And so we want to ask that question. Not every case, but Shem is, I think Shem seems, we don't know the exact order, but Shem is listed first, so he's probably the oldest. But it seems to be the exception. It seems like every time there are brothers, it seems to go to the younger. Question, why is God doing things this way? Why in every other inheritance and covenant on earth, it's always the older that gets the privilege, that gets the higher position. Why in Genesis, when God deals with people, he always seems to be going with the younger?
grace.
Yeah. Yeah. It's how does that show grace?
It ought not to be. It's not the expected order.
the rules
Yeah.
of inheritance aren't they fleshly anyway? So God doesn't follow. He has his own rules.
True. He doesn't, these are God's ways are not our ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Salvation's by grace, which grace is, yeah, go ahead, Steph.
Well, it's just interesting. I don't know how it is in all you guys' house, but whenever you play a family game, right? Littlest goes first, right?
Yeah.
So comes first, right?
So the whole thing is this, is that salvation's by grace, which means it's favor for the undeserving.
Oh yeah.
The youngest is the least deserving of this. That's why it's by grace. It's a shock. It shouldn't have been. Abel shouldn't be the one. Cain should be the one. He's the firstborn. It's a very privileged position to have. Same thing with Ishmael. Even though he's the son of a slave, he is the oldest son of Abraham. In fact, the Muslims take Ishmael as the legitimate heir of Abraham. Same thing. Esau, definitely Esau better than Jacob, and any of the brothers. Reuben becomes a nobody in Israel, and all these guys over Joseph, and definitely Manasseh over Ephraim. But every time it's like salvation is by grace. There are other little brothers that will come later. You know who the next little brother is that God will use and rise up? Is Moses. He's the little brother.
Oh, Aaron is older than he is.
Aaron and Miriam are older than him, and he's the little one that God will use. But again, it's not saying, look, I mean, as a youngest, I always feel special, but birth order is not significant in the kingdom of God. But in the Genesis, it's emphasizing the point of grace. God is choosing the undeserving to know that this salvation is by grace. It's a very fascinating inheritance. And again, yeah, go ahead.
Could you say that the concept of the oldest being favored is more of a fleshy idea, whereas God choosing, in this case, the youngest, to show that he's the one that chooses.
Yeah, I think he explains it that way. It's like he's the child, like Isaac is described in I think it's in Galatians. He's the child of the promise. He's not the natural born child. He's the child of promise, of faith, that it's the one who should have gotten the inheritance. But also I want you to notice what the inheritance is. This is not a typical family.
Right.
Jacob is not divvying up his property and ready to divide it up, his property. Jacob is dividing up the inheritance, which is the promise, which is here's your inheritance, you guys. You're gonna be tribes in the land of the promise that our families are not going to inherit for another 400 years. Okay, so it's like that's your inheritance. It's not something you're going to ever see. It's a promise. It's an eternal promise looking ahead. It's not something you're going to get when I die. You're not going to. Jacob's possessions at that point are nothing, are not that significant. I mean, the boys already have control of it. It's not that big a deal. In fact, Joseph is the one providing for the whole family right now. It's really the promise that is the inheritance of looking forward to 400 years from now. That's several hundred years when they inherit the promise, they begin to inherit the promised land. And so the next section is going to get into that. And so you'll notice, what is the last thing he says to Joseph? He says he's going to put Ephraim will be greater than Manasseh, and a multitude of nations will come from them. So he's not even necessarily talking about their individual lives right now. We don't know what Ephraim and Manasseh's life was going to be like. We have no idea what kind of young men they turned out to be. All we know is that they became great tribes in Israel, and Ephraim was a greater tribe than Manasseh. That's all we know. We don't know anything about them individually. So, but then he says to Joseph at the end, he concludes with a very interesting thought here. What does he say to Joseph?
Going to give him that mountain slope that he took from the Amorites with his own power.
Yeah.
And
When's he going to do that? When's Joseph going to get that mountain slope? Thanks, Dad. I guess I got a mountain slope somewhere in Canaan land.
about to die. So I would say that it'll come through God, through him.
Yeah, it's really interesting how they're talking. He's talking about when they inherit that land, that one slope there will sort of be. I'm not sure exactly I don't know if any of you guys have a study Bible about what that slope is. But it's like he gives them this particular slope that he took. But remember, no one in Israel is left in the land. They're all in Egypt right now. So who's watching that mountain slope? I mean, who's in charge of that? Where's that go? He's looking forward to when the Lord brings them into the land and they conquer the land. That slope that he once took from the Amorites is going to be considered Joseph's, so dedicated sort of to him. It's really strange because there's nothing useful about this gift of inheritance for Joseph. It's not like something he can use right now. He's not going there anytime. They're settled in Egypt. And yet that is a special gift because it's a future memorial, a future reminder of this. And I think, is there a was it the woman at the well in John 4? Wasn't there a reference to something like that? I can't remember. I'm looking up real quick on my phone app Bible here, but the woman at the well, she was at
it was the well that Jacob had.
He gave him that well to drink, gave it to Samaritans. This water that Jacob had built. Okay, maybe it's a different place. But if you remember that, I'm wondering if that mountain slope is the Mount Gerizim. That's where the Samaritans worshipped, on that mountain. and they believe that that was the right mountain to worship on based on Genesis and all the journeys there was Mount Gerizim. I'm not sure if it's the same one. Does anyone have a note on that somewhere?
Yeah, I'm reading it, and it's kind of confusing, so I don't know if you want me to read it. It's kind of,
All right. If it's not insightful, we'll just kind of skip it for
I
now.
don't think it is.
Okay. All right. So let's go forward. But I think the one thing I do want to emphasize is that the inheritance is not a typical inheritance. It's not like, you get the house, you get the car, you get this plot of land, you get that plot of land, and something that they can take and enjoy right now. It's this promise is their inheritance. They're getting a promise of that land that they will not see either, that they will not inherit, which I suspect is why Esau despised his birthright. I think he understood that I don't think he had much interest in promises of God. I think he wanted things right now, like a bowl of soup, and was willing to give up that inheritance because he wanted what's right now. So we walk by faith, not by sight. All right, moving along here. Genesis 49. And let's pick it up there. Jeff, you want to start us off here with that? Why don't we take the first 4 verses and get those down?
Starting with verse 1.
Yes, 1 to 4.
Then Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you what shall happen to you in days to come. Assemble and listen, O sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel, your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the first fruits of my strength, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. Unstable as water, you shall not have preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it, and he went to my couch."
Okay. All right. So this is the next section. This is the second to last chapter before. This is the last words of Jacob before he dies. And this is Jacob's prophecy, if you will, regarding his sons, which would be the tribes of Israel. What's going to become of them? And so he gathers them around and tells them to listen, and he begins with Reuben. All right. What does he say about Reuben here?
He's
He's not going to be number 1, like you would expect.
Yes. So he starts, he's supposed to be
his first fruits.
the firstborn, right? The firstborn, the first fruits, the strength, the dignity. He should have been preeminent, right? But what happened?
He defiled his father's bed.
Yeah, what's that a reference to?
He slept with his concubine.
Yes. Reuben slept with his father's concubine. Remember which one it was? I can't remember.
I should
Mm.
know.
See the one of Bilhah or Zilpah.
I'm thinking it's Bilhah. That's what I'm thinking, and I'm trying to remember.
Yeah. Let me see what it says here. Bilhah. That was from 35, 22, and 23. What was the significance of that? What was the meaning of his doing? Why did he do that? And he did it publicly, by the way.
It was a way of proclaiming that he's like number 1, taking the power.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a coup. It's like a coup, seeking to you remember who did this later on? One of the king's sons did this, if I'm recalling correctly. Yeah.
Absalom.
Absalom did that to David.
Yeah.
Yeah. He slept with one of his concubines. So it's a rebellion, coup. And so therefore, you shall not have preeminence. So and that's exactly what's going to happen with Reuben. Reuben's territory is not even going to be in the promised land. It's going to be on the east side of the Jordan River. and it will be this one of the smallest, least significant of the tribes is Reuben. You never hear anything about Reuben. No one really cares about what happens to Reuben, except it makes a great sandwich. Other than that,
My favorite.
good one, huh? So let's
My
read the
favorite,
next section
like
here.
sauerkraut, so I order it every time I go out.
Um, Elizabeth, would you read the next one about Simeon and Levi, verses 5 to
Sure.
7?
Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons of violence are their swords. Let my soul come not into their counsel. O my glory, be not joined to their company. For in their anger they killed men, and in their willfulness they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce. In their wrath, it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel.
Nice.
Is that it?
Yes.
That's it. Okay.
Yes. So let's talk about Simeon and Levi. All right. He references, what does he say about them? What is this? It's this. There's a problem with these guys. What's the problem with them?
They're violent.
Violence and anger.
And
What did they do?
They killed all
yes,
the people because Diana was raped by a prince of, was it Sechem? Sechem? I forget what city.
Shechem. Yeah. If you remember, when they basically murdered all the men of Shechem after Dinah's rape. And we saw how God used that because Jacob was about to do a very foolish thing in joining with having their tribes merged together, and they would kind of join together with the pagan tribe, and so God used that to keep that from happening. Remember, he uses all things, even evil things, but it's clear that what they did was not good. It was it brought a curse upon them. It was not something that to murder innocent people is not in God's plan there. And Jacob curses them for this. And it's very interesting. So cursed be their anger. And what does it mean, by the way? They killed men, and in their willfulness, they hamstrung oxen. What does that mean?
Makes them useless.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see if I've got any notes on that. What's the purpose? I mean, they how is that? It's kind of interesting to mention that. It's like the hamstrung oxen. They killed the men, and they hamstrung oxen. What happens if you make oxen useless? What were they used for?
Plowing.
Yeah, plowing. I mean, you're basically it's almost akin to what the Romans would do, where they would if they defeated a city and then they sowed salt in their soil, so nothing would ever grow again. It's almost like going beyond, not just killing the men would have been sufficient, but feeling the need to hamstrung the oxen so that they just the land becomes useless for them. So it's just overboardness. They just go. They had a right to be angry, but they're angry. So, all right. So what's the curse going to be then? What's going to happen to them?
He divides and scatters them.
Yes, they will be divided and scattered. How were they divided and scattered? Do you know?
They didn't get no. Well, the Levites become the priest. Can't remember if Simeon gets a piece of land.
Levites become priests, which means regarding the land, what does that mean?
They don't get any land.
They
They get no land. So there is no land of Levi. There's no property belonging to Levi. The Levites are everywhere. They're scattered among all the tribes now. And in that way, they're going to serve as priests. So it's really interesting. He's going to take a people that are cursed and scatter them. And then having scattered them, they will actually be a blessing to the people as they're cursed and humbled by that, which is kind of interesting. Which sort of reflects even our Lord Jesus, who was cursed, but then when he rises, he becomes priest for us. So, what about Simeon? Do you remember what happens with them?
They, I think they get taken in, aren't they?
Yeah, Simeon's land
Yeah.
is
Absorbed.
inside Judah,
Yeah.
and they are absorbed. They are completely surrounded by Judah, and they are absorbed by Judah. They become part of the Jews. That's why sometimes when you see a map of the tribes, you'll see Judah, and then within Judah, you'll see kind of like a striped thing that says Simeon, because showing that they're kind of they are Simeonites, they're from Simeon, but they've really been sort of taken over, absorbed into Judah, and they don't really have a land. So the Levites are scattered throughout Israel, and the Simeonites are going to be scattered within Judah. Okay. And that's as a result of their great sin, which is recorded to us. All right. Let's pick up Judah next. Where do we leave off here? Liz, you want to get that for us? 8 to 12?
Sure. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's son shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down, he crouched as a lion and as a lioness. Who dares rouse in him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until the tribute comes to him. And to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. Binding his foal to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine, he has washed his garments in wine, and his vesture in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk.
Okay. Take a look at what that is about. So Judah, what is he saying about Judah? Let's go through it one time at a time here. So Judah, the first thing he says,
His brothers will praise
Brothers will
him.
praise you.
all right, your brothers will praise you. Let me put that in a second here. Okay, your brothers will praise you. That's a takeoff on the name of Judah, which means praise. Okay, next.
Your
Yeah.
hand shall be at the neck of the enemies, of your enemies.
Your hand, you will defeat your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. So he speaks to you. Basically, you will defeat your enemies. Okay, triumphant. And your father's son shall bow down before you.
Mhm.
So clearly, Judah is going to be honored above the other tribes.
Yeah.
All right. Notice he says your father's sons, not your mother's sons, because that would mean all the tribes, not just his other brothers from his mother. Then he describes him what as a verse 9?
Lion's cub.
Lion's cub.
Lion's cub. Huh. What do you think the meaning of that is? A lion's cub.
Well, lion is a symbol of power and royalty,
Yeah. Why describe him as a lion's cub, though?
because he's the son of the lion.
Is it kind of subordinating Judah to Christ?
Yeah, perhaps, but I think it's more of as you're looking at it, when you think of a lion's cub, it's nothing scary right now. There's nothing glorious about a lion's cub, but it will come a day when he will be king. So it's almost like saying he's a lion's cub means this is the future king.
Yeah.
Not the present king. He's not the lion right now. He's a lion's cub, which means this exaltation of Judah is coming. It's not right now. Though I'm sure he's respected among his brothers right now. But right now, if there is a honored king of the brothers. It's Joseph right now. It's not Judah. Joseph's the one with all the power and the provisions and the connections. Judah's just one of them. He's really turned his life around. God has done a great work in him. But his glory, he's a lion's cub. He's a future. He will be the lion. He stooped down. He crouched as a lion, as a lioness. Who dares arouse him? Huh, interesting. He crouched down crouched as a lion. And the lion, so the fierceness and the power.
That would mean to me that he's in a protective mode, that he is taking care of his people.
He's crouched down, you mean? As a lion.
Ready to pounce if need be. You know, he's prepared.
Stooped down. So he's kind of sleeping, like a sleeping giant almost. It's like this is sort of a speaks to the future of it. So you're crouched down he stooped down, he crouched as a lion and a lioness. Who dares arouse him, implying he's sleeping right now.
You got a hand raised.
Yes. Is there a hand somewhere?
Yeah.
Haley.
I don't see all of them. Yes, Haley.
Does it have anything to do with, like, you hear about the Lion of Judah?
Yes, absolutely. That will come later on. Christ is called the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Absolutely. So Judah, you can see how big Judah is. I mean, even if you don't understand what he's talking about here, you clearly say, keep an eye on Judah. Something special about this tribe. Something significant. We can say, like, okay, we're not going to see much from Reuben and Simeon and Levi. We're not keeping an eye on them, but Judah is like, okay, all right. And then, as if you didn't get it now, he says the scepter. What's the scepter mean?
Rulership.
That's the rulership of the king, right? Shall not depart from Judah. Now, this is an important passage. What does it say here? Shall not depart until when?
Shiloh comes.
Say it again, Bob. I didn't quite hear that. I'm sorry.
It says until tribute comes to him.
Yeah. Who's the him?
That's interesting because in the NASB it says until Shiloh comes.
Yeah, that's what the King James says too.
Till Shiloh comes.
Yeah.
Huh.
And to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. And it has a note that Shiloh means the one to whom it belongs, referring to Christ, obviously.
Okay, I like that. To whom it belongs. That's a Shiloh.
My book says to who it belongs with reference to the Messiah's reign.
Right.
Yes. This
The
is
prophecy of Ezekiel 21-27.
so
It's really
we're
they use tribute in this translation you're looking at.
Christ will come from Judah. So we're just following through. Remember at the beginning, in Genesis 3, God said, the son of the woman will crush the head of the serpent. So all along, we're looking for who's the son of the woman? Who will it come through? And immediately you get Cain and Abel, and you realize, okay, Abel is clearly the son of the woman. But then he dies. And then we're told, but then comes Seth, who takes his place. And so, okay, Seth is the son of the woman. So whoever it is coming from Seth, not from Cain. All right, we go along and we clearly see, okay, Noah. Noah is the one who finds grace. He's the son of the woman. And then we end up with Abraham. Okay, all right, now we're given a promise to Abraham that the son of the woman will come from Abraham. So now we're looking for, okay, who's the son of Abraham? We're narrowing it down here. So you have all these nations and, okay, Abraham. And then we're told it's not Ishmael, it's Isaac. And then, okay, it's not Esau, it's Jacob. And now Jacob has 12 sons. It can only come from one of them. And we're like, it's Judah. Judah's the one. Even though Joseph has been sort of the hero of the story so far, we're told by Jacob that the Christ is coming from Judah. And notice that who will obey him? All the peoples.
All the people.
Will obey. We'll call him the son of Judah. The king is coming from there. And this king is not just for Israel, it's going to be for all the peoples, all the world. That's why when David comes, we can say, okay, he fulfills part of it. He has become the king of all Israel, but David was not the king of the world. David was just the king of the Jews, king of Israel.
Mm.
But the Christ will be the king of all nations. We'll see. All right. Then it says, I don't know if we have any notes on this one. Binding his foal to the vine and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He has washed his garments in wine and his vestures in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine and his teeth whiter than milk. Huh. What a strange thing.
Yeah.
Something about a foal and a donkey's colt. That's strange. And then choice vine, and who washes their garments in wine? Haley, you have a question? Comment?
Comment/question. You know, the whole time you were saying through grace they pick the younger sibling, and a donkey's colt is obviously not as I don't know, prestigious as a foal. And when Jesus rode in from the Mount of Olives into Jerusalem, he rode on a donkey's colt. Is that resemblance of that?
What's the significance of him coming on a donkey's colt?
That the answer is in, I think, First Kings, because when Solomon becomes king, he rides David's colt, donkey. He rides David's donkey to his coronation, and that's the way it usually happened. The person who is becoming king rides the donkey of the previous king. Well, Christ has no previous king. He is it. So he rides. He doesn't ride anyone's colt. He rides on a brand new colt.
Okay, that's interesting. So, Addie, you had a question or comment there?
Yeah, what I was gonna say is it also could be Mary rode on a donkey, and then Jesus rode on a donkey.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to add a couple things to what you've said here. So Rob makes an interesting point of the never been ridden before, implying that there's no king like him that he's inherit. So he's not taking this throne from another king. But there's one other thing about riding a donkey and a foal, like what Mary would have ridden, as opposed to what kings normally ride. What do kings normally ride?
Horses are usually power and warring animals, whereas you would never use a donkey as a warring animal.
Yeah, and so the significance of coming, it says in the scriptures that he came, was it gentle on a donkey and bringing peace, not war.
It's very humble to come in.
Yeah, gentle and humble.
Of a steed. He's on just a measly donkey.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on to this here, and gentle and humble, coming in peace. So he's this king that is going to rule the nations is not like any of the kings who have ever ruled the nations. I mean, if you think about the kings who've ruled the nations, you're thinking of Nebuchadnezzar. That's not him. You're thinking of Alexander the Great. That for sure is not him. This is a different kind of kingdom. And then he says this whole thing. He washes his garments in wine, his vestures in the blood of grapes.
Pastor, I did a phone Google to see what was said about it, verses 11 and 12, and it says it's an hyperbolical expression setting forth the great abundance of wine in this tribe, of which there was such plenty that if they could, they might have used it instead of water to wash their clothes in, but not that they did so, only if they would. It may denote the great quantity of spiritual blessings.
Okay.
I think it's interesting that there are passages of scripture that says that when Christ returns, it'll be, his wrath will cause a great crushing of the grapes in the wine press, where the blood is, neck high, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's what it sounds like to me. That
And it sounds like Revelation, where it talks about they will wash their garments in the blood of the Lamb.
right.
That whole scene there. If it means something else and kind of hints toward that, or if what Revelation says is sort of a takeoff of what's being said here too. But the darker than wine, what's the when you think about the color darker than wine is like a dark purple, which is a royal color, if I'm not mistaken. By the way, just as a side note, we discovered there are grapes about 100 years back from our property here. We took a hike through the woods after the cookout, and we found all these grapevines back there growing. And so there's all these Concord grapes back there. So we did a little mini harvest. I don't know who they belong to, but we felt like they were not being used, so we took.
You could take it by eminent domain.
We did. So
We had a Concord grapevine in our yard when I was growing up. My mom would make so much jelly that we ate Concord grape all year long.
well, the funny thing is those particular ones, they taste like eyeballs when the skin comes off of them, that little slimy thing. You can say, Steph, you had a quick comment? No? Okay. All right. Let's pick it up from there. So his eyes are darker than wine. A lot of emphasis on the wine, the blood, the dark colors, and although the whiter than milk teeth, which is interesting.
Means he's healthy.
He's healthy. Is that what it means?
Yeah.
Teeth.
You're not healthy, your teeth aren't looking good.
It's good. So clearly a wonderful blessing on Judah, something to keep an eye on, and some hints about what the Christ might be like. Okay. All right. Let's continue here. 13. Let's take a look at Zebulun and Issachar. Let's see. Addie, would you like to read a little bit?
Yeah, I would.
All right. 13, 14, and 15.
Okay, Zebulun shall dwell at the shore of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall be at Sidon. And then
Issachar
is a strong donkey crouching between the sheepfolds. And then he saw that a resting place was good, and that the land was pleasant. So he bowed his shoulders to bear and become a servant at forced labor.
And then 16 too.
Oh, Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel.
Right.
You can stop right there. I just wanted to go to 15. I'm sorry. Let's go take Zebulun and Issachar first. So Zebulun, what is said about Zebulun? It doesn't really say anything about what's going to become of his tribe, except sort of where he's going to be settling.
Lebanon.
Yeah, settling. So he's going to be by the shore. What sea is he talking about?
Mediterranean,
That's the Mediterranean Sea. Yes. What is it called sometimes?
the Great Sea.
Great Sea. Thank you. Yes. So that's where he's going to be there. Haven for ships. His border shall be at Sidon. So that's up in the north. If you look on your maps, you'll see that. So he's going to be the northern coasts of Israel. Issachar says a few things about him. first it says?
He's a strong donkey.
Donkey. What's the meaning of that? A strong donkey.
Well,
Uh-huh.
it's interesting because donkeys are very good at protecting sheep. They're actually very fierce about protecting sheep from any intruding predators.
Oh, interesting.
That's interesting.
Did not know that.
I know they're very protective, but I didn't know they were used for sheep.
I knew they were stubborn and they are they're forced for labor oftentimes. They're not like they're so this one he says here, let's take a look at what it says. So it's between the sheepfold. So they so the first part about that is he mentions their connection with sheep. So they're protectors of sheep, you say? I like that. All right. And then he says regarding that, he says two things about them. Regarding as donkeys, between the sheepfolds, the first part is what? Okay. What kind of land is he going to get?
Pleasant land, a good resting place.
Yeah, look at a good and pleasant land. Next time I come, I'm gonna get a map of the of all the tribes so we can see where they're located. That would be helpful, I think. I'll get that next time. But like a donkey, he gets to be in the pastures with the sheep in a good and pleasant land. But there's another side of being a donkey that's mentioned here is what?
Become a servant.
Yeah. He will be like a donkey into forced labor. That's a perfect picture of a donkey. By the way, if you remember, there's a famous Disney story that features donkeys.
Is that Eeyore?
No, not Eeyore. Not the one I'm thinking of. But donkeys that are not in a good way. They're forced into slave labor, these donkeys, if you remember. Pinocchio, right? All those miserable kids, they turns them into donkey. What a horrifying tale that is. So all these awful boys are turned into donkeys and forced into slave labor.
Most of those fairy tales were really awful in their original forms.
You might call them awful. I call them wonderful. I love them in their original forms. And they get what I love about the original forms is they're such cautionary tales. You're horrified and terrified to do the right thing because you don't want to end up like these people.
Yeah, they were meant to teach you lessons, whereas Disney has sprinkled pixie dust all over them, so you really don't learn that it was meant to teach.
Yes. So Issachar is going to be at some point. We don't know when. We're not sure exactly what it's referencing. There were many times when the Israelites were put under slavery, under bondage. But Issachar is going to endure that. They're going to have to deal with that. Even though they're in a good place, they're going to be enslaved. So it's really fascinating. We'll kind of stop here today. But going through these, it's like, these are interesting blessings because are they even blessings? They're more like curses sometimes. They're telling them what's going to happen to them. And there's such a realism about it. There's no like fairy tale. We're going to give you all the wonderful things and try to gloss over their history. It's like it's brutal reality. This is what's going to happen. Reuben, you're going to be a nobody, a nothing because of what you did. Simeon and Levi, you're done. You're scattered throughout the land. You're not even going to get it to her. Judah, all right, you're special. Great things that come from you. But Zebulun, you're just going to be by the sea. Issachar, nice land. Too bad you're going to be forced into labor. And we'll get to Dan, which is going to be the worst of them in a minute. Well, that will take on not next week, but in 2 weeks when we come back. Oh, wait a minute. We got 316. Shall we take Dan? Shall we continue here? Let's do one more. Before
Comment about Issachar. My King James version says that he is crouching. What does it say? Hold on.
Crouching between the sheepfolds.
Nope. It says, darn, I lost my place. He's crouching down between two burdens.
Oh,
Hmm.
okay.
And that sort of gives it a twist that they're in the midst of work.
Oh, that's interesting. So then the emphasis is going to be really much more on the forced labor at that point too.
And
That's
then
it.
the comment goes on to say that they are happy to do the work and that they are receiving God's blessings because they are working as servants, as we all should.
Mm.
I don't buy it. I'm sorry.
I'm shoveling it.
And there's one reason in that verse 15 that makes me say, I don't think he was willing to do this work.
I'm just reading what I'm reading.
I'm just reading the Bible here.
Well,
They-
you win.
I'm terrible.
Sure.
But
I'm at forced labor.
it's the forced labor
is
that
not-
that makes me think this is not something he's happy to do. He's not this willing servant.
That's what it says. That's what Liz is correct. That's what the Reformation Study Bible says.
What does that say?
Later, failing to drive the Canaanites out of its territory, the tribe of Issachar is apparently willing to trade its liberty for forced labor. Issachar throws off the Canaanite yoke under the leadership of Deborah and Barak.
But that's not a good thing to trade your liberty for forced labor.
Well, it says he was willing to do it, it says.
Yeah, but the commentary that Liz read made it sound like Issachar is a good example for us that we should all be willing servants.
Oh,
But they were willing to serve because they were cowards. They didn't want to. They
Right.
didn't want and they served their enemies even. So I don't. I'm sorry. I don't. I just don't think Issachar is a model of Christian service. I think they're presented as slaves who are going to be oppressed or willing to be oppressed. But does it say in the Reformation Study Bible a reference to what future event it's thinking of? Did it give a passage for that? I don't know if it had.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Not sure if there was. So yeah, that's why it's like I'm not. Some of it's a little bit mysterious. We're not
Come
sure
in.
exactly. Go ahead.
Judges, it says Judges 5:15.
5. What does that say? Judges 5:15. Find it real quick. The princes of Issachar came with Deborah, and Issachar, faithful to Barak, into the valley. They rushed at his heels. Among the clans of Reuben, there were great searchings of heart. Well, that's part of the song Deborah sings. Huh. Yeah, I'm not sure. So, remember some question marks there. All right. Well, I guess we will stop here. So we'll get to Dan next time. Any last comments or questions before we go? I'll try to get a map for you next time. We can look at the lands and go from there. Okay. So let me stop here recording.
Everything